There are no dials or buttons on the dash. I spend a lot of time looking at the screen. And
a Trump presidency would, at the end of the day, be bullish for Tesla, negative for EVs.
And if we don't make this EV transition, Ford's not going to make it.
All that and more. So let's get to it.
So much of the Tesla origin story was that its technology was great. It was a great product, but they've made some tweaks that on specific models, I think it's Model X and S after a certain year, and then refresh Model 3, that actually have not gone down well with the Tesla owners.
Yeah, that's right. It did start in 2021 with S and X. It's now migrated to 3, which means it's hitting the mainstream buyer. And the mainstream buyer does not like giving up their turn signal stocks. What Elon is trying to do is trying to go stock free.
What Elon's trying to do is go hands-free. Now, I have a 2023 Model X. The lack of stocks is a bit of a learning curve, but it isn't the worst thing in the world. Once you get acclimated, it's actually a better user experience. You get a better view of your screens and there's less things that you can bump into.
And you also lose the windshield wiper stock on the other side. All of those have migrated to being buttons on the steering wheel.
I have a Model Y, which I pay for myself, but it has the stalks. The one thing I'd observe is like the screen in the middle. There are no dials or buttons on the dash. I spend a lot of time looking at the screen and reading the JD report. I think that was a big point that many of the respondents made as well.
If you're in a Tesla and you find yourself looking at the screen a little bit too much, all you have to do is ask the Tesla what you're looking for. I can tell the Tesla to navigate me to the bank, to the grocery store. I can even tell it to change the radio station or play something specific. Like, I don't know, play something from Paul Wall and it'll do it. If you're struggling with something on the screen, feel free to ask the car itself until you can figure out where this stuff is.
Absolutely. JD Power said, the author of the study told me that the consumers report that they have much more eyes off the road time because they're hunting around for these, ordinary functions. This isn't high-level tech that people are looking for. They just want to beep the horn because something happened in front of them and they can't find it.
It's a button on the steering, a button on the steering wheel. All right, I'm done with this. Point being, if you find yourself inside a Tesla for the first time, you will notice how clean it is, how smooth it is. And then once you get on the road, you'll understand the difference in performance. There is a reason why this is not what you're used to, because it's better. When adding up all the pros and cons of removing the stocks, I'd say Tesla's software easily makes this a pro because of how smooth and efficient everything is on the car. But hey, I've been using Teslas for about 4 years now, and your boy is never going back to an internal combustion engine.
What do you mean the recovery story has begun?
The comeback story for
Did it
Tesla,
need a comeback?
I think it did, because they had massive headwinds in China, and now we're seeing the comeback play out. Now, 2Q deliveries next week, I think that's really going to be the last of really some of the worst that we've seen in China. We're starting to see a mini recovery in China. The comeback kid story for Musk is starting with, of course, Robotaxi Day in August. I believe this is a stock that's going to have a massive run second half of the year.
What do you think has been, then, that headwind that you talked about? Is there one thing you could point to?
Look, EV demand's clearly been soft globally, but it's really about China. I mean, China was a massive tailwind for years, became a headwind, but now, Brian, you're not seeing those price cuts anymore. So you're starting to see stabilization. China demand starting to increase. And I think the stock's telling you, and we believe next week's just another sign of it, is that the worst is in the rearview mirror for Musk and Tesla.
Look, Tesla's going to have static growth for the year 2024. It's probably going to be growth, but not by a whole lot. But all in all, the demand for Teslas is still there. Many people just can't simply afford a Tesla. Other EV manufacturers are losing their shirt when making their own battery electric vehicles that are, let's face it, inferior to any Tesla that you could purchase. On top of that, you have Tesla trying to reimagine the manufacturing process so that they can make the most affordable car possible. Enter the robotaxi. Enter the next generation vehicle that may come in under $25,000. Now, Tesla plans to traverse this minefield with caution. They already manufacture battery electric vehicles better than anyone on the planet. And they have plans to reduce the cost to produce these vehicles by somewhere between 30 and 50%. Until they iron out this new manufacturing process, they're choosing to go a little slower than they normally would. When they retool factories and ramp back up, open the doors to new factories, the growth is going to come back with a vengeance. And lo and behold, the market will be caught with its pants down.
With Tesla, if Trump wins and rolls back some of these EV financial incentives, don't know if he will, but let's say he did. Would Tesla have a natural advantage over its customers because of its price point? In other words, are they kind of, dare I say, a Trumpy portfolio type company?
Tesla doesn't need these incentives. Their vehicles will sell with or without them. They will sell much, much better with the incentives, but they are not a necessity for Tesla to survive. Unlike some of these other car companies that aren't making any money off of their vehicles. Rolling back of the IRA will kill legacy auto manufacturers, will destroy startups like Rivian and Lucid. Tesla's advantage comes from the manufacturing process and the supply chains that they've ironed out. Profitability in building battery electric vehicles is not an easy thing to do, despite what Tesla makes it look like.
A Trump presidency would, at the end of the day, be bullish for Tesla, negative for EVs. Then we saw that when you showed that across well, Rivian and others. And I think it also speaks to the Biden administration. Musk has really been an afterthought. In a Trump administration,
well, he's been actively ignored.
Actively.
President Biden, I think 2 weeks ago, tweeting out something like, "We're going to make EVs in America," and like he got ratioed, and people are like, Tesla? Mm-hmm. and I already does?
And I think if Trump's in the White House, Musk gets more front and center. That's bullish for Tesla, especially if you start to see those EV rebates roll back. Negative for the industry, bullish for Tesla.
If those rebates were to evaporate, so too would legacy automotive.
Somebody decides to buy an EV Silverado from GM in part because they get $7,500, right? If that goes away, they might say, I just can't pay for that. I'm going to go with the Model X.
And they've already scaled. If you look at their scale and you look at their pricing, they are in a massive position of strength. And that's why I think as you start seeing more signs of Trump presidency, that is bullish for Tesla.
Oh boy. Maybe we should hear from the CEO of Ford. Let's see what Jim has to say.
But I want to start out with an op-ed you just published this morning. For those of you who haven't gone to read it, Jim's going to walk you through it because it really lays out your vision, particularly around electric vehicles. Here we go.
And it pretty much explains who I'm as a person. I drove across the country without a driver's license and insurance, much to my parents' chagrin in Michigan with my Mustang that I had bought that summer and lived in and restored and built a new engine. And since then, all I've really worked on and thought about is cars. I'm just an old school car person. And I guess I wrote the op-ed because I think many of us at Ford started to get tired of all the politics in the EV business.
What? We should probably take the politics out of the EV conversation? But Jim, what the hell are we going to talk about now?
From my perspective, it's time to really take a step back and reflect on what it's like to actually drive an electric vehicle. Not for the save the planet part, but everything else. The actual human experience of driving an electric vehicle is wonderful. And for someone like a petrol head like me, whose family's from Detroit, I think the next picture, or the few one, that's me and my electric Lightning. which I took a road trip across California, all the way down to California with my son last summer, and I learned a lot as a leader.
Learned a lot? He probably just saw tons and tons of Teslas on his road trip. But Jim is absolutely right. Until you actually press the accelerator on a battery electric vehicle, anyone, it doesn't even have to be a Tesla, you are robbing yourself of the joy that comes with driving an EV.
That's my daily driver. I drive an electric Lightning, and I'm totally converted. And I don't know why we're all stuck talking about these vehicles as if all they really do is have no carbon footprint. What really, to me, what really convinced me of why we should invest in EVs on a personal level is because of the experience of driving past the gas station, of effortless acceleration on the highway, or passing someone, or decelerating without using the brakes.
Ding, 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 ding. Tell him what he's won, Johnny. Your mother f***ing right. These are just the simple joys of driving in an EV. However, if you find yourself behind the wheel of a Tesla with FSD engaged, might just blow your socks off.
It's amazing. We have modems in all of our vehicles. When you actually look how Americans drive, which we have the longest spaces, the average American only takes less than 4 trips more than 150 miles. The normal range, max range now, even on a cold day for an EV now, is about 300 miles. So 95% of Americans would have no problem living with an EV and not really having to charge on the road very often with home charging.
That talking point sounds oddly familiar. I think Elon might have said something to that effect. A 500-mile battery range is ridiculous when most individuals don't do nearly that much driving.
Early on, it was a really expensive thing. But with the collapse of the EV pricing, it's basically made EVs the same price as an internal combustion engine vehicle now.
Sounds like some more talking points about battery electric vehicles reaching price parity with the internal combustion engine. I wonder how the trend will continue.
For the future of Ford, which is the only company that didn't go bankrupt, only family-owned car company.
Because Tesla also didn't go bankrupt.
It's really important for us to sort through this. So I wrote the op-ed because this is my grandfather. He was the 389th employee of Ford. He joined when he was 14. That's his ID card in 1918. He had been at the company for 4 years. He started a year before Henry Ford introduced the moving assembly line, which he was all pissed off about because he used to build a whole car and now he just built wheels. And like so many millions of families around the world affected by the Ford Motor Company, my mom went to college because of his job at Ford. And our whole family was transformed because of the company. And if we don't make this EV transition, Ford's not going to make it.
Do we really want to live in a country where Ford doesn't exist? Just a footnote in the annals of history. I, for one, want to see Ford make it. I want to see GM make it. I do not want to see them to go the way of Blockbuster, of Kodak, and so many others that failed to keep up with the pace of technology. In conclusion, J.D. Power cites Tesla's quality as being degraded because of how their technology is being used. No more stocks for windshield wipers or turning signals equals confused and upset customers, resulting in poorer quality. Get the f*** out of here with that nonsense. According to Dan Ives, Tesla's troubles are in the rearview mirror, folks, as a Trump presidency seems more likely. As an investor in Tesla and a user of its products, it doesn't matter whoever sits in the Oval Office, Tesla is going to be just fine. Their ability to adapt to any administration's policies is uncanny. Operating on 3 separate continents, maximizing the benefits of the IRA, establishing localized supply chains, maximizing profitability. I can really care less who sits in the Oval Office when it comes to Tesla. But as the CEO of Ford so eloquently put it, let's take the politics out of EVs. If Ford doesn't make this transition, they will go extinct, along with everyone else that is struggling to be profitable with battery electric vehicles. It is true, the cost to produce these vehicles is coming down. But until these EV auto manufacturers, not named Tesla, can actually make a profit from selling these vehicles, incentives are a must to keep these companies going. Like I said before, I don't want to live in a world that doesn't have Ford, that doesn't have GM. I may not be invested in either of those companies, but I don't want to see them die either. That's all I've got for you today. Be easy. Peace.